Dear listeners and viewers, as I had told you in the summary part of the great novel The Shadow Lines by Amitabh Ghosh, that I will come with the themes, the narrative technique, and the title of the novel. Here I am going to explain you the themes of the novel. If you understand these themes, if you will have a complete understanding of the novel. Amitabh Ghosh has dealt with a number of themes in the novel. They are the theme of partition and its impact thereafter, post colonialism, freedom, political freedom, cultural identity, alienation, disillusionment of people, nationalism and internationalism, violence, memory and imagination, idea of space and time. The shadow lines in itself is a title or theme. The Shadow Lines is a realistic novel with innovations and complexities. The novel depicts the post partition scenario of India and the violence that follows it. It is set against the background of India and East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. The political leaders of pre independence time in India tried to control the political unrest in India by splitting the country into two parts, India and Pakistan, in the year 1947 based on religious lines. This, this division created greatest problem of migration from one country to the other, resulting in further brutal violence. They were bewildered. The shadow lines depicts the pathetic situation of the people living in the post partition period. The novel is divided into two parts, going away and coming home. The story of three generations is depicted by a small boy, unnamed narrator, who is growing up in Calcutta. His description is based on his memories and the stories narrated to him by his uncle Trideep and partly by his grandmother Thamma. The novel covers almost half century after independence. It starts in 1939 during World War II. The focus of the novel is on the partition of India and the consequent trauma of the East Bengal Sikh and the people of East Pakistan. Hence, partition becomes one of the dominant theme. The trauma continues through three generations. The agony of displacement, the sense of alienation in the adopted land, and the constant dream to return to one's land are the potent themes of the novel. Partition was viewed as a price for political freedom from the British colonial rule. It shows the evil fruits of partition. The events of the shadow lines shows the political unrest and violence in Calcutta, India and Dhaka, East Pakistan in the late 1963 and early 1964. The political unrest is connected to almost all characters in the novel. Tridib, who is the male protagonist, better understands the role of partition and colonialism that played to arise the conflict between India and Pakistan. Jethu Mosai and Tridib lost their lives in Dhaka. This was a result of partition. Ghosh has attempted to explain a number of themes by using symbols and imagery like maps and mirrors, borders, atlas, spectacles, photographs, stairs, etc. The title, The Shadow Lines itself is a theme. These usage of symbols and imagery make the novel more beautiful and keeps us engaged. Ghosh says that these lines are arbitrarily drawn, invisible and not permanent. It cannot go away from one's memory. These lines are hence a mirage. Drawing of maps and borders is no permanent solution. Rather, they further trigger violence and hostilities. The reality of a space and time, distance may separate the people, but they cannot separate them from emotional bondage. This is mistaken by the political leaders. Jethu Mosai, who is 90 years old and is living in Dhaka, clearly speaks to his sons when they were leaving Dhaka. Once you start your journey, there is no stop. If they draw another lines, then where will you go and where will you stop? I have born here and will die here. He dies finally in 1964 in the hands of the mob. Thus we find various elements of post-colonial novel in this great novel by Ghosh. Thus, in all sense of the term, Ghosh can be said to be a post-colonial or postmodern writer. Hence, post-colonialism becomes yet another important major themes of the novel. The theme of identity has been vividly described by Ghosh, who attempts to internationalize the issue. That is why I have used the word internationalism as a theme. Ghosh has a cosmopolitan ideas and he tries to give his diasporic imagination in the novel. He himself asserts that the Shadowlines is an international novel with cross breeding of ideas and culture. The people who have left their homeland and have settled elsewhere after the partition suffer from alienation, disillusionment, and then cultural identities. The novel reminds us the short story of Saadat Hasan Manto, written in 1955 on the theme of partition, where he says about Toba Tek Singh, who is in a mental asylum. Nobody knows where he will go, as when he is in asylum, partition takes place. Toba Tek Singh says, and who could say India and Pakistan would not entirely disappear from the face of the earth one day. The another most important theme of the novel is the concept of nationalism. I am deliberately elaborating the themes because separate questions may be asked on themes of partition, post-colonialism, nationalism, etc. That's why I am elaborating them in detail. The theme of nationalism, which is still relevant in our present contemporary life, Ghosh has challenged the meta-narratives of borders and existence of nation-state. The author selects Thamma, the grandmother of the narrator, to evaluate the issue of the Bengal partition, the concept of nation and nationalism. Thamma is, of course, a great nationalist and traditionalist. Though the partition dividing the nations on the basis of religion that caused millions of people to migrate of one part to the other, but the migrated people suffered from the nostalgia of their birthplaces and their childhood. Thamma is symbolic of vehement nationalism. She goes back to Dhaka to bring back her uncle Jethu Mosai after 20 years. She does not recognize her birthplace and frequently says, "Where is Dhaka? Where is Dhaka?" She is now a foreigner in Dhaka, as Trideep says to her. Jethu Mosai and Trideep are killed in the violence. However, Jethu Mosai was living now with a Muslim family named Khalil. The novel shows that even after the partition, no one was safe. Still, there were Muslims in East Pakistan giving shelter to the Hindus, often at the cost of their own lives, and equally the Hindus protecting the Muslims. Thus, Ghosh questions the very basis of modern nation states. Nationhood itself is a mirage because it is not based on any logic, Ghosh says. Thus, the novel proclaims that nationalism is a defunct force, and in this background, Thomas ridiculed as a still surviving specimen of fossilized nationalism. In fact, all the characters in the novel possess characteristics of nationalism, but in different ways. Jethu Masai, the old man in Dhaka, shows nationalism so frequently that he fights for the place where he was born. Ghosh says nationalism is an infantile thing. It is measles of mankind. Jethu Masai says, I should like to be able to love my country and still love justice. These lines by Ghosh and Jethu Masai speak a lot about the concept of nationalism as depicted by Ghosh. Hence, Ghosh has criticized nationalism in its extreme form, which may result in more hatred and violence. Now, Ghosh has equally explained violence as one of the important themes in the novel. The brutal kind of violence was taking place in 1963 and early 1964 in Calcutta and Dhaka. At the same time, it was a communal violence, a repercussion of partition. Trideep and Jethu Masai become victims of this communal violence in Dhaka, while in Calcutta, the narrator narrates about the severity of the violence in his own words. I opened my mouth to answer and found the sound of voices running past the walls of my school, of mob, and a glimpse in the park, circus. I had never experienced such a sound. Hence, Ghosh depicts the absurdity of violence. Now, yet another, the most important theme is memory and imagination. This novel is often called a memory novel. The memory in the novel of the narrators and that of Trideep plays such an important role that Shadowlines has been called a memory novel, as I told earlier. The novel has a multiple layers of themes and complex narratives. Through the contrast between imagination and reality, the novel develops with the narrator recalling childhood experiences. It is a novel of memories. The sidelines pictures the events that take place in between English family in London and Indian family in Calcutta. The stories move from present to past and past to present. The narrative travels through time and places and displays the experience of partition and pain. There is a thin line between memory and reality, personal, general, and emotional, and particularly communal and religious violence and normalcy. The novel depicts the happenings in India and Bangladesh, India and England, partition and migration, migration, past and present. All events are well knitted and interwoven. The narrator recalls the stories of three generations, partly gathered from the grandmother's childhood memories, and rest gathered from Trideep, his uncle, who is a great imaginative person and reads geography and imagines a lot. He teaches the child to imagine. As per him, imagination may be true. So the narrator looks the world with Trideep's eyes. Trideep presents such a vivid picture of memories to the narrator as if these memories are his own memories. Trideep was just 9 years old when he was in London, but he presents everything to the narrator about the experiences in London. When the narrator goes to London in 1980s, he does not have any kind of problem in recognizing the places as all have been described to him. Thama is yet another big link of memory for the narrator. She narrates various events which she had faced during her childhood. She explains about the partition of her house in Dhaka. She also describes about the partition of her exactly in the same manner in which India and Pakistan were divided. This gives us a first glimpse of partition of India. This is symbolic, which Ghosh has explained early in the novel. Thus, everything in the novel has been narrated by the narrator is based on his memories and imagination. Even Thama's presence in Dhaka is based on memories of the narrator. Hence, in every sense of the term, the novel is a memory novel based on imagination. So, listeners, you can clearly write or call that The Shadowlines is a memory novel. Now, the next theme is freedom based on political freedom. This is also one of the most important themes of the novel. When Ela comes to India as an adult, she is called a whore by Thamma. When Ela calls a fascist, Thamma becomes angry. She does not like Ila's ways of living, her clothings, and other aspects of her life. Thamma has own concept of freedom, whereas Ila wants to be free of India. She wants to be free from Indian culture, tradition, regulations, restrictions, customs, and gets back to England. Thama also says Ila has no right to live in India. She says freedom is earned as a right. It took those people hundreds of years and years to build that country, run their borders with blood. Here, Ghosh depicts conflict between tradition and culture and modernity. Political freedom, as Ghosh depicts, is useless and meaningless. As he has said in Shadow Lines. In his opinion, shadow lines divide the people. Hence, he calls these lines are shadowy, invisible, and run arbitrarily. Maps and lines are imaginary. People cannot in any way be debarred from their political freedom. These lines are political borders. Jethu Mosai has explicitly expressed about the futilities of these lines and borders. The next theme is the idea of a space and time. This is yet another theme of the novel. Idea of free space, neutral space, and closed space at different times have been vividly described by the author. Trideep finds a neutral space in Calcutta at Victorial Memorial when he meets May, and May develops a relation with him. Jethu Mosai is living in a closed space in Dhaka. Thamma Trideep later on become a part of it, whereas Ila has been caught in a third space, though London may be considered as a free space. Events move forth and back without a fixed frame time. Thus, a number of themes have been interwoven in the fabric of the narratives of Shadow Lines in an artistic manner. That's why Meenakshi Mukherjee has aptly remarked, the novel is all about totalizing of India. Now, this is the end of the themes. Listeners, I will say to thanks to you with a request that please, if you like my description of the themes, Please like, subscribe, and definitely you will enjoy, I'm sure of. Thank you.